Well, we were received in Quebec, and it was a reception for the history books. The first thing we learned about Canadians was that they were thieves, common thieves. Our first experience with Canada was that we were robbed because we had to surrender our little suitcases and whatever we had in our pockets. And there was a special room set up for that, and so we did that. And there were very nice people in uniform who wrote down everything we handed over. And none of us ever saw any of that stuff again. And a year later, I think about a year later, there was a court-martial of some sort. And I think one or two guilty men were punished in some mild way, perhaps. We don't know anything about that. And none of us ever got anything back. And I lost a comb, I think, and a pack of cards. Others lost other things, rings, I think maybe. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, one person lost a typewriter, which he had managed to keep in the English camps. And one person lost a bottle of aspirins. And when he complained about it, he was told by a person with authority, "You don't need aspirins in Canada. In Canada, we don't have headaches." That was our first reception, our first impression of Canada, bunch of robbers. And then we were taken by truck to the historic ground, the Plains of Abraham, the very battlefield in which the fate of Canada was decided. Mind you, we didn't know that, or only one or two people did know that. We learned that certainly very quickly, that this was an extraordinarily important little bit of territory which we occupied, and it was prepared for us. And there were cabins, huts, and a very nice barbed wire, and a terrific view of the St. Lawrence Valley, a marvelous view, terrific sunsets, thunderstorms of historic proportions, gorgeous, noisy. Everything was loud. The colors were brighter than we had imagined in Europe, that we had experienced in Europe. And we also had a very nice camp commandant called Colonel Wiggs. Piggy Wiggy, we called him. And he was a good father to us all. He was a kind man, a loving, kind, patriotic man, very proud of his city. He had been a coal merchant in Quebec City, and in fact, there were 2 guided tours, guided by armed soldiers of the city. So we got an impression. I did this once. We go around the streets, the Grande Allée, I remember. And all this was very, very, very nice. And so there we were from July until late September in the summer of 1940. Really very much cut off from the world, because first of all we were far away from our battlefront. Secondly, we were not allowed radios and newspapers, as we had not in English camps, so we didn't know very much. But it was physically beautiful, and we had enough to eat, in great contrast to England. We had lots to eat. We had got army rations, but we had very talented cooks among us. Some had worked in hotels in England, or Vienna, Viennese pastry, and for the same raw material, as was supplied to the Canadian Army. We got, but our food was much better than theirs because we had a better cuisine. Now, there is one interesting tiny little detail about all this. We were never together with German prisoners of war. On the ship, there were German prisoners of war in uniform. By then, the British had not captured too many. Summer of 1940. But in the Camp L in Quebec, there were some Nazis. Let us say Nazis, who knows? I mean, we called them Nazis. And they and the rest of it, let us say, I can't remember the numbers, and maybe I never knew them. But let us say, out of, let us say, 800 men, there were 50 non-refugees. Among the 750, I'm making up those figures, who were refugees, most but not all were Jews. There were some non-Jews, there were some Quakers, there were some communists, political refugees, conscientious refugees, but most of us were Jewish or half Jewish. In that particular camp, I don't think we had any Orthodox Jews. Orthodox Jews were in another stream because there was another ship and there was another route. But in our camp, later on we were together with Orthodox Jews. That was a great problem because they had to have special food problems and what to do on a Saturday, the Sabbath. That was a problem. Let's not talk about that now. We had Nazis. Now we were, the whole political nature of our little society was super democratic. We had meetings all the time. Everybody was elected. Camp leaders, camp committees, everybody was elected. We had constant election campaigns. And the question was, should the Nazis participate? They do not believe in democracy. They believe in the Führer. They believe in authoritarian diktat. They love dictatorships. They don't like talk. They like orders and follow orders. So the question always was, should we allow them to participate in the democratic discussions? And the question for them is, do they want to? Because all kinds of things were decided which affected them, the whole arrangement and government of the various huts. The Nazi hut, I think, was hut number 14. It was always called the Nazi hut. And it doesn't really matter how it was resolved. It was one of those things that was constantly being discussed. That's one of the things. The other thing that was always constantly and never really resolved until the following year is, should we allow the authorities, the Canadians, to treat us like prisoners of war, which we were not. We were not. A prisoner of war is a combatant, is a man in uniform, is a member of an army. We were not. We were civilians to the bone. And we did not wish to be called prisoners of war because it suggested that we had once been Nazi. In the German, the word German and Nazi was kind of interchangeable. Wrongly, but that's how we looked at it. That we were had been in the Nazi army and were still in German uniform. And there we were, a bunch of Jews. It was intolerable, absolutely intolerable, that we couldn't get it through the thick heads of the Canadian management, meaning the military, that we were not to be treated like German prisoners of war, which we were not. However, what were we going to wear, for example? We had whatever we had been wearing, and we were given prisoner of war uniforms. We were given kind of black, like blue jeans, black, not what am I talking about? Not black, dark blue, canvas stuff. Looked like jeans. And at the back, was a great big red circle, the idea being that if we escape, they can shoot, they can see the red circle, and they'd shoot us in the back. And should we wear this? Well, if we wear it, did we not admit tacitly that we were prisoners? That's one of the things. We all wore them, because what else can we do? The other thing was this, awful. Notepaper. We were allowed one letter a week on a kind of prescribed notepaper, which that's what's a regulation, I think under the Geneva Convention. And if we accepted that, we were tacitly agreeing with their label, prisoner of war. If we obeyed that rule. That was crazy. And we said, we will not do that. The result was that we couldn't write any letters. For a few weeks, we couldn't write any letters. We were too proud to do that. And then it seemed to be so absurd that we were punishing ourselves, and like a lot of other things, our high-principled resistance broke down, and we accepted those letters, and we did write letters, and history took its course. Whether we had done it or not, it's all forgotten now, but it seemed hugely important at the time. And that was the summer of Quebec. That is how we stayed until the late September, and the next chapter I am looking forward to telling you all about the next time.